So the ES350, it's not a supercar. Well, it was never meant to be, but that's why Lexus made the LFA. It's not even a sports sedan, because that's what the IS was for. And what the GS was for, but they killed it off because, well, this thing outsold that, even though the GS was a sportier one. But that doesn't mean the Lexus ES350 doesn't have a soul. It does, but it's a little more understated. Just looking at it from the outside, it's not crazy flashy, but you can tell it's more of a quiet luxury kind of vibe. That's basically what the ES is supposed to be. The whole thing about the ES being a luxury Camry is basically true, because if you take the facelifted Camry that came out after this ES and you put their grills together or side by side, you can actually tell that Toyota borrowed some styling cues from their ES. Just sitting in the ES, you're already surrounded by leather. Cruising around in one of these, it's like you're sitting on a couch on the freeway, but with a 3.5 liter V6 in the front. Sitting in the back, it actually feels like an LS. Well, for me at least, because I'm only about 5'4", so sitting behind my seating position in the ES, I actually have very healthy amount of legroom. We'll wait for the engine to, almost said cool down, to warm up a little bit. Once it gets to about 1,000, that's when I'm comfortable putting it in reverse and then reversing out. Even though this car's from 2017 and doesn't have CarPlay yet, it does have buttons on the underside of the mirror that you can connect to open your garage door. I'm gonna drive it around calmly for now, and then we'll push it a little harder once it warms up. You can tell just cruising around at speed, just how quiet this thing is. Also, even flicking the turn signal itself feels luxury because it has this smooth but firm feeling to it. Lexus put a V6 in this car because it'll last longer and it runs quieter, since to make the same horsepower as a 4-cylinder, it doesn't have to be as loud. However, because Toyota put a V6 in the ES350, that does mean it's not immune to fun. Even though people think of the ES as a bit of a grandma's car, despite the fact that, well, there's quite a few of these on the road. But if we take it off sport mode, put it in, well, sport mode again, show you what this thing can really do. Don't worry guys, this car is in the family and I know it very well. I even got my driver's license in it. That being said, I wouldn't do any of these if I didn't own the car unless the owner was completely alright with it. And the interesting thing about this is that you can have it in 6, drive, and then it'll automatically downshift to 4th. For about like a second when you actually try and shift it. Watch this. Also, the ES was the first time I realized and kind of found out that whenever you have like some sort of manual shifting gear selector, in the ES's case a gear limiter mode, you actually don't lift the gas when you shift. About the gas, the pedal actually has a relatively short amount of travel, which I was surprised by since the ES is a more comfort-tuning thing. Especially in sport mode and in first gear, it helps the car feel a little jumpier than you'd think off the line. Downshifts are also a bit laggy as well, and you can actually feel the car jerk if you go off the gas. The only other thing with the ES is actually had to get used to the fact that the stick's actually set up in reverse to most cars. Just requires a bit of adjustment getting used to, you know? Oh, dude. It's... The steering feel on the ES is actually pretty comfortable. Just making sure the car's not turning into us. But yeah, power steering on this thing's pretty nice. You don't feel the road as much as you would with, you know, an actual decade sports car made for the track. But the ES was never made for the track. It was made to cruise on the public roads. See how well it holds. And as you saw there, it shifted immediately once it got too high. I know in the footage it looks like I shifted it as it hit red line. I actually didn't. I reached over for the shifter as I heard the noise alert me that the car auto shifted itself up to the next gear. And also I actually moved the stick the wrong way up, which would have actually shifted it back down to first. But the car didn't let me do that either because that would have been really bad for the engine. A lot more modern cars especially will do that, mainly to protect the engine. But the fact that I could get this to like over 6,000 RPM before it actually took over, it's actually pretty good for a car that's not a sports car. But the only problem with actually using the stick is that, yeah, the shifts are a bit laggy, but even though that would seem like a problem to most people who are into something more sporty, I personally consider it as just part of the character, part of the personality of the ES. Where others might see flaws, I personally just see fun quirks. Instead of timing my shifts for peak torque, I have to time them for about like a second earlier than where I'd actually shift. Let's be honest, even for a car that's made to be a comfortable daily, it's still fun getting to let the engine breathe and really let those 6 cylinders sing. You can also use a sports setting for some engine braking as well. Okay, even though it's not as responsive as the R8 that I once drove, it's still better than my Corolla, which has a CVT that, well, you can't really manually shift the CVT. There's cars that actually have like fake shift points for the CVT, but this is not one of those cars. Oh shoot. Okay. Now that we're cruising with an actual sports car right there, yeah, no, the ES stands no chance. I mean, you could race all the like bloated SUVs that you usually see on the road, especially nowadays in 2025. But against an actual dedicated sports car platform, yeah, no, the ES is not a track car. Is the Lexus ES a luxury Camry? Yes, it is. The Camry and the ES have always shared the same front-wheel drive platform, so calling it a luxury Camry is actually pretty accurate. The main difference being that Lexus gets a quieter, more comfortable interior, and the ES tends to be a little sharper than the XLE and LE trims of the Camry, but not as sporty as the SE or XSE trims. Does the ES have sports car spirit? I personally would say so, mainly for the ES350 trim with the V6. Despite being more comfort-oriented, the ES still has sport mode, a gear limiter so you at least have some control over the gears when you want it, and it has a gas pedal with a very short amount of travel for what you'd expect. 270 horsepower is still 270 horsepower or about, and the ES has no problem putting that power down on the road even though it's only the front wheels and not the rear ones. On a final note, the Lotus Emira shown here and the Lotus Evora both use the same V6 that Toyota and Lexus do. The main difference being that since these are dedicated sports cars, they're tuned for more horsepower and they have superchargers. This was the driver in command. Stay safe, have fun.